Welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast with your host, Chris Anderson. In this show, Chris and his guests will share their knowledge and experience on how to go from zero to successful entrepreneur. They have built their businesses from scratch and are now ready to give back to those who are just starting. Let's get ready to learn, grow, and elevate our businesses. And now, your host, Chris Anderson.
Welcome back to another recording of the Elevate Media Podcast. I am Chris Anderson, your host, and today we're going to be learning a lot from an individual who has had multiple successes in business. And if you've heard of any tax companies by the name of John Hewitt or Liberty Tax, well, you're about to be able to learn from the man who was responsible for creating and having those businesses be as successful as they are. So excited to have John Hewitt on the show today. John, welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So lots that you've done in your career, right? John Hewitt, Liberty Taxes, now you're doing loyalty brands. What got you started in entrepreneurship from the beginning?
I give all the credit to my dad. My dad, frustrated entrepreneur. I was born while he was a freshman at Michigan State. He had three more children before he graduated, and we were poor. And he always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but it wasn't until I was 20 years old, and he was a CFO of a public company. He called up H&R Block and tried to buy a franchise. So that didn't work. They were already had opened a company. They were going to open a company office in the city that we lived in. So it took him another 10 years. And finally, in 1981, he convinced me to leave H&R Block and build the first tax software for an Apple computer.
Oh, wow.
So by then I was 30 years old. So it took him till I was 30, but I give him all the credit for dragging me out of the corporate world.
That's really cool. And, I think parents, they can have such a big impact. My dad, he worked a corporate job. He still is, to this day right now, I think 35 years or more in the same company. And so I didn't necessarily learn the entrepreneur side from him, but I learned the hard work and sticking with something, even when it's not as glorious, for, the goal that you want to achieve. And his was to provide it for a family, to make a difference in that corporation. And so, no, it wasn't directly compared to business and entrepreneurship, but has been a big tool for me too, stepping in to this world in 2020, where I was about 28 at the time, 29, excuse me. And so kind of around the same time you got started back in the day. Did your dad give you any good, trinkets of knowledge that you carry with yourself today as you're growing and building businesses?
Most of there's no school in America on how to be a CEO. And my dad was a CFO, not a CEO. So I've learned through the school of hard knocks. I've been a CEO on the 14th of this month. I'll be a CEO for 42 years.
Wow.
And I've most of the lessons I've learned is by all the mistakes I've learned. They say the people that are the most successful have made the most mistakes. So I've made more mistakes than almost anyone. Yeah.
Being super early on my journey, I can tell you that's true. And those learning moments, they don't necessarily always feel good in the moment, but thankful for them because they made us better and brought us to that next level kind of thing. As people are starting their businesses or trying to figure it out, sometimes the first business endeavor doesn't work. The second doesn't work, even multiple after that. What's the difference, in succeeding and not succeeding in a business from your perspective?
Well, I think it was Walt Disney that went bankrupt like 3 times before, 3 to 5 times before he finally made it. So the key is perseverance. I did an hour presentation about a month ago on to build what it takes to build great companies. and I came up with about a top 10, but it was actually 12 different things. And there are many different things to build great companies, but to be successful in a personal relationship or in a business, it's the key thing is perseverance. God doesn't put anyone here to skate through. We all face adversity, and the winners just get up every time and keep going.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. Playing sports growing up, now in the entrepreneurship world and having different connections with who are successful, who are just starting out, like it's all kind of shows that same thing now with the Olympics. We're recording this while the Olympics are going on, just a perseverance that gets people to success. And I think it can't be forgotten that that's a huge trait that you have to either have or build or get to those next levels and in business. But I like the perspective and the position you come from as franchise, right? So can you explain for someone who might not understand what a franchise is for those listening?
Yeah, as a franchisor I brought in 5,200 franchisees. So I've changed tens of thousands of people's lives. My job is to give you the best system in our industry. And if I do my job, your job is to take that system and implement it in a certain area of that you acquire. You acquire the rights to use our system, license those rights in a certain area. So that's the relationship that is, we develop the system, we develop the processes, we develop the name, we maintain quality. Your job is just to go out. It's sort of like I drive up a bus to your house, and your job is to get in and drive the bus. Don't tinker with the engine or don't tinker with anything. Get in and drive the bus.
Yeah, I like that. And so do you find that, so maybe someone's trying to start a business and they haven't got the success yet. They're still trying to figure it out. They're persevering. They're coming forward. Do you see that? Would they still make a good franchise owner, or do they need to have success in business to be successful in the franchise world?
You don't have to have previously owned a business, but you do have to have an entrepreneurial spirit. What I've learned in changing so many lives, out of the 5,200 franchisees I brought in, maybe 20% should never have been self-employed. They thought they wanted to be self-employed, but they don't have the get up and go. They don't have the drive. They don't have the risk tolerance. They don't have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So even though they want to be, 70% of the population want to be entrepreneurs, only about a third of the population has the wherewithal to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I like that. So with that, to kind of piggyback on it, if someone is coming in and they're able to do a franchise through you, what are things you look for in that individual that is like, okay, they're going to do well in this?
Again, when you're in a franchise system, it's doesn't matter how smart you are, doesn't matter how educated you are, it doesn't matter how experienced you are. What matters is, here's the recipe. It's if you were going to cook a meal and you got a recipe from a great chef, and it called for a half a pound of salt. Why would you put in three quarters of a pound or a quarter of a pound? You need to follow exactly the system of doing business. So that's the thing we're looking for. And then once they have that, then they have to be able to. They have to have drive. There's no one there that says you have to be at work on Monday morning and that you have to work extra number of hours. You have to be, it reminds me of my favorite 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, it is up to me. So after that, then I've had so many thank yous from so many people in my career. And I tell them, I gave you a opportunity. I gave you a system. And after that was a nanosecond. And after that, you took it in and developed it. If it is to be, it is up to you.
Yeah. So with the franchising, is there an age limit? I think of my dad, he actually applied to do a new franchise that was coming here to our town, Chick-fil-A. Actually, he got through the whole process, which, if you know Chick-fil-A's process, it is long and it is deep. It's a big deal. And he got to almost the last stage where they would have flown him out to Georgia. But he was like, man, I think it's just my age. I'm too old. I'm 63 at the time. Like, I just think they're not looking at me. Does that matter in your perspective for franchising?
I've had franchisees as young as 18 and as old as mid 70s.
Okay.
It's rare to have someone over 65 or 70 because it's when you start a business, it's not a sprint. It's a long distance. It's a marathon. And so it takes typically 3 to 5 years to mature. So if you're 70 years old and you start something, you say, well, 5 years from now, I'm going to be wealthy. Well, maybe not. It's not interesting as opposed to if you're 40 or 45 or 50. So most people today are and that's changed over the years. When I first started franchising in the 70s and 80s, most people that joined us were in their 50s. And then now that's come down a lot to the average age of someone joining us is late 30s.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah. Cause my dad's planning on retiring soon. I'm like, well, I don't see you just being able to sit around and do nothing. And so I'm like, maybe because we've had it, like, maybe you should look into franchising again, do maybe something different. And so I was just curious with that. And, I know there are investments depending on the type of franchise that you're looking into. On average, is there a payment that someone would have to pay to become a franchisee, or, what's that kind of look on average?
Yeah, there are all kinds of possible expense, cost, investment to get in. If you buy a McDonald's or a Dunkin' Donuts, it's going to cost you millions of dollars. We have 9 brands, and the average cost to get in, including everything, all in, is about $75,000.
Okay.
But
and are there
you can buy hotels and restaurants and that cost millions and millions of dollars to start.
Yeah. So if people think that is something they can't afford because they're thinking like them fronting the bill, are there ways that they can have that investment fronted, maybe by investors, venture capitalists, things like that, or does it have to be from the individual themselves?
What I tell people is to start a business, to build a business, you need 2 things. One is you need money, and you need the skill set to do it. And I say it's a lot easier for me to get money than it is to find people with the right skill set. So if you're the right person, I'm going to give you a chance to do it with little or no money. Now, it may mean you have to work for us for 6 months or a year to prove yourself, but you will have a chance. If you're the right person, we will get you involved, and with little or no money.
That's awesome, and I like that. Given the chance, I think that's really cool. So, with your franchisees, do you have a stat that shows like 50% of the franchisees are successful and in their business gets up and running and is, profitable and things like that? Anything like that with what you've done?
Sure. I'll say this, that 20%, 1,000 of them became millionaires. 20% went out of business, and the rest did decent, but not spectacular.
Sure.
So
and decent is like a living wage, like basically like.
They could only be worth 800,000 or 600,000 or they made it, but they never got all the way to millionaire.
Okay, gotcha. And for some people that's like I think of my dad, like he's retiring, like he would just be happy getting something to support him and be able to do more in the community kind of thing.
I've been in the tax business for 55 years, and it's extra nice because it's seasonal. And so you only work a few months a year. And so it's a nice revenue source for early retirees who, again, they just don't want to sit home and do nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is just interesting. And, just thinking of the time frame we're in. And so with that, so Yeah, and I think franchisee is like you mentioned earlier, like you're giving the process, you're giving the plan, and you just have to have the drive to go and get things done, basically. Not that it's easier, it's still, building a business, but at least you have some of the plan laid out, right?
Yeah, everything that's worthwhile requires hard work.
Yeah.
But again, if you're in a seasonal business, it's just a short period of the year. And
Yep.
if your dad's in the north like you are,
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice time of year to be in business because during, I grew up in Buffalo, and during January through March, it's a good time to be in business because you can enjoy this summer, spring, summer, and fall.
Yep, for sure. Now with just kind of going towards the tax, like, that's where you have a lot of knowledge in. Can anyone be a franchisee in a tax world? Do they have to be, math based or accounting based type person at all? Does that matter?
I brought in 5,000 people, and half of them were tax experts. Okay. They were accountants, or they had worked for H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt or Liberty or ATAX, and half of them knew nothing. Actually, the people that knew nothing did better than the people that were already in the industry because they didn't come with any bad habits.
True.
You would think, Chris, that out of the 5,000 people I brought into tax, and I've been doing it for 55 years, I'm self-proclaimed great grandfather of tax.
Right.
You would think they would listen to me, but out of the 5,000 people I brought in, no one's ever listened 100%. And the winners listen 98 or 99%. The people that become millionaires and very successful, the people that fail listen less than 90%. So again, it doesn't matter how smart, educated, experienced you are. It only matters. Here's the plan. Here's the recipe. Follow the recipe.
For sure. That's cool. And that's what I like too. And like, because I've thought future stuff, like once I have more bandwidth, financially, time, because, we're still building our business here to get into franchise. It just is another stream and another business and things like that. So it's just intriguing to me, just from where I am perspective wise. And so, with your journey of entrepreneurship, franchises, things like that, what'd be 3 things you would want to share with someone who's just starting out, maybe in their business or in a franchise, to help them kind of stay on that path of success?
Well, my general 3 things in life, and that especially pertaining to work and building wealth, is find something you love to do, work hard, persevere. It's that simple. And and I think I'm invented the phrase, thank God it's Monday. If on Monday morning you're going to work and you're not looking forward to it, you're going to the wrong place. So if you're a thank God it's Friday person, then you're probably working in the wrong place. You're probably, when you're as blessed as I am, I've been 55 years ago when I took an H&R Block course, started working for H&R Block. I mean, I've never worked a day since. And I built 2 companies that have 10,000 offices and worth over $1.5 billion.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love those tips. And I think I think we're seeing it more, maybe with my generation and those around it, of choosing that, like choosing something that they actually enjoy, and finding that, because I know we're seeing less and less people who are like my dad, who are just going to stick with something decades and decades just to stick with it. We're bouncing around a lot more to try to find that, what do we enjoy? Like, where do we enjoy working? Like, where do we enjoy living more now? Do you see the shift in that as well with franchise owners?
Yeah, I think that there's been a new trend over the last about 10 to 15 years that now successful franchisees or entrepreneurs or just successful people in business, they're buying franchisees for their children who are just graduating college. So there's a lot more 20-somethings that are starting in business funded by their well-to-do parents. So then that didn't exist much before 15 years ago. Now it happens at least 1 out of every 6 or 7 of our new franchisees is a kid financed by their parents.
Interesting. So the parents purchase the franchise first and they build it and then they transfer it over to their kids. Am I tracking right on that or no?
No, they actually buy it from scratch. And
okay. So like, hey, I want you to start this franchise. Well,
right.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's always been a handing off of generations that I build the business and hand it off. That's happening in the 21st century. That's been in decline. But this is a whole new concept that you acquire a franchise and here, John Jr., go build this business and follow the system.
Yeah. And I think that's so cool. Like, I never thought about that perspective of doing that, but it makes so much sense because they're going to get the knowledge that's already built and the systems and processes on how to do the business. So it's a little bit, quote unquote, safer. I mean, they still have to put in the work, they still have to have the drive, they still have to do the actions, but they're almost like getting a mentor from people who built the business on how to do it correctly. And then that gives them a foot up if they want to ever branch out and do another business as well, at such an early age.
When you say it's a little safer or a lot, it's 95% of non-franchise businesses that opened 5 years ago. 95% of them are closed.
Yep.
95% go out of business. 95% that bought a franchise are still in business.
Yeah.
So it's 19-1 more likely to succeed if you acquire a franchise than start a business yourself. So it's way, way safer. And you have something to sell. I mean, if you, let's say you acquired our tax business and total investment's $70,000. At the end of the day, if you're not good at it, you hate it, you fail, you still have something to sell that's could be worth $50,000, $100,000, $200,000. So you built equity. And so it's way safer than if you go try to do something on your own, because you have a saleable asset. Most of the initial investment is the cost of the franchise itself. So you can always turn that over to someone else.
Yep. That's so cool. And again, I think this just is a great process, a great, step that people can take to get in the business and, build a different life. And, so it really intrigues me just because obviously that's kind of how my mind works with business and entrepreneurship. And the reason I got into the first place was just being able to build something, help people and have a different lifestyle than, what I saw growing up, which wasn't bad. It's just different. And so, I've loved this conversation and it just gets a lot of wheels spinning, right? And I know you're heavy in the tax field as far as franchises go. Are there different industries that do better with franchises out there? Tax obviously does well with what you're in. Are there others that people could pick from that are, just more profitable, I guess, and ease of entry?
And that changes. There are over the years, right? That changes by whether it's in a recession or a non-recession, for example.
Gotcha.
Taxes tend to be recession-proof. But if you're in a recession and you own a restaurant or most of the franchise fitness center or things like that, you're gonna suffer, especially during COVID, right? I mean, certain things suffered. So and there are things that are cyclical that get hot, right? There's over the last about 5 to 10 years, what's really changed is psychologically in our country is now there's a significant amount of young people, 20s, 30s, 40s, who instead of having children are acquiring a pet. And so they're giving up children to have a pet. And then 10 years ago, pets were thought of or treated more like animals. Now they're treated like members of the family. So so pet industry is going crazy. So right now, and that's been ever since, and COVID accelerated that because people were staying home. So 10% more of the households in the country got pets. So pets is real hot right now.
Yeah.
Elder care, starting about 8 years ago, for about 20 years, there's going to be 10,000 people a day turning 65. So elder care has gotten far bigger starting about 10 years ago, and that'll go for another 8 to 10 years. And so there are certain things. I mean, for example, fitness has cycles, right? That there was one that did really well. It started about 2000, called Curves, and it grew to like leaps and bounds, and it was for women and had very little equipment, and then it almost went out of business. So it virtually doesn't exist anymore. And now the number one thing is Pilates.
Yeah.
And and then kickboxing was hot, and boxing was hot, and hot yoga was hot. And so there's all kinds of trends, but the trends in income tax has been just steadily growing by 1% to 2% a year for 55 years, but it doesn't leap up. Pets is growing by double digits. So I'm really excited about our pet franchise, our mobile, our Zoom and Groom, and our mobile pet grooming business. We'll be 3 years old on the 18th. And we're already the top 25 out of 4,000 franchisors in the country. We're in the top 25 fastest growing in less than 3 years. So, and we'll be, by the end of the year, we'll be number one in the category, number one mobile. And just like I did with Jackson Hewitt and Liberty, within 5 years, we'll be a household name. So it'll be Zoom and Grimmin. We'll be in every city in the country of more than 30,000 people. And again, my third household name. I'm the only person that's developed 2 of the top 100. Now, within 3 to 5 years, I'll have 3 of the top 100 largest franchise chains ever.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And I like so there's a lot there to pick out. Like, you have specific data points that you look at to where these franchises would be. You said above 30,000 in the city, things like that. So I'm sure there's more to it, which just fascinates me as well. Like the logistics of how you pick the cities with that. So how do you project? Like, so obviously pets, you've seen, boom, big increase, big spike. Do you see that, because I'm sure you look ahead, like, do you see that kind of tapering off eventually in the future? How do you kind of navigate or plan for, like, hey, this is gonna be something hot right now, but it'll probably decline in the future? Do you, like, how's that kind of work in your mind?
Yeah, it's only a little better than 50-50 to plan 5 years out. Sure. So you can't, if you're looking 10 years out, you're maybe 10% chance of being right. So I'm always thinking 5 years out. And it's our job as a franchisor is take the pulse of the industry. The pet industry looks good for at least another 5 to 7 years. Looks great, not good. Yeah. Looks strong for at least another 5 to 7 years. Another trend is Hispanic. In this country, if you look at the population of non-Hispanics, mostly white and blacks, it's flat. And Hispanics, even without the record immigration, illegal immigration, even if you don't count that, has grown by 6 or 7%. And I don't see that changing. I see that, as far as I can see, that's going to be, they predict by 2050, and I have no reason to doubt this, that there'll be more Hispanics in this country than any other race. Wow. And so, if you are in business, you have to think about that. And if you're in it for the long haul, you better adjust your behavior. Speaking Spanish every year is going to be more and more valuable. To be bilingual is going to be more and more valuable because so many first and second generation Hispanics who prefer to, or who, if you can speak Spanish and English, you can deal with 95% of the population.
Yeah. And I love that. And just thinking ahead and planning and seeing all those trends and seeing what's coming it fascinates me as well as try to look at that. And we're in the video production agency, so it's there, and AI is a big one for us, looking at that and how that shifts things. And how we still stay prevalent and still, yeah. So it's fun stuff to look at, and things definitely to be aware of. And, I know you mentioned earlier the tax franchises, kind of shifting gears a little bit, but talking about the future still, recession proof, right? You mentioned they're pretty much recession proof because everyone needs taxes and need help doing those. Do you have maybe a few others that are fairly recession proof that people are looking for something kind of even more safe as economics and politics happen? Do you have a list of those?
Well, I can tell you that during the biggest recession of our lifetime, in 2008 and 2009, the Liberty added over 700 locations. We're the fastest growing company in the country. And the second fastest growing was Dollar General, because they were not only were people not going to the Macy's, and they weren't even going to the Walmarts. So those Family Dollars and Dollar General that were in the local neighborhood, they prospered. So they prosper during recessions. I mean, they do well in all times because they're in the neighborhood, and people don't have to travel far to go there. And so they're regularly frequented in the small towns, but they really do well during a recession. So there are businesses that do well during recessions like that cater to, okay, I don't have much money to spend, but I do have my basic needs of life. And that's at a Dollar General, for example.
Interesting. Yeah. And that fascinates me. And I'm curious to hear this too, because when you mentioned Dollar General, I always think, man, when I go into town, it's like I see a Dollar General and then I see a Dollar Tree not too far from it, or like a CVS and a Walgreens. Like, is there a reason that those are so close in what they do, being so close together?
Well, it started long ago. When McDonald's opens, they spend $35,000 today to find a location. Guess how much Burger King spends? Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. They just go where McDonald's go.
Next door to McDonald's, right? So they know that if the McDonald's is doing X amount of revenue, then they're going to do Y amount of revenue. And it's the same way with Walgreens and CVS. You can tell by the revenue of your competitor how much revenue you're going to have. And this is an exact number, and I don't know the number, but let's say that an average Burger King does 80% of the average revenue of a McDonald's. Then they know that if McDonald's is doing 7 million, they're going to be doing 5.6 million. But if they go like 5 miles away, they're guessing. They have to do a demographic study. So it's easier to take the demographic study, which is better than a study. It's the actual performance of your competitor. And even McDonald's they have a 25% market share. So when Burger King opens next to them, you would think that they would be impacted. But Burger King has almost zero impact on McDonald's. So where does Burger King get their business? They take business from mom and pops. And that's what's happened over the last 50 years with Walgreens and CVS and Rite Aid. And they take business from the mom and pops. They're not going to, we never had a significant impact on H&R Block.
Right.
But today H&R Block only has a 13% market share. 87% of the returns are done by one of their competitors. Would you rather compete with the company that does 13% or the competitors that do 87%? We take most of our business from the mom and pops, not from Block.
Yeah. Interesting. So I was always curious on that. So that's very very interesting. But John, this has been fantastic conversation. Just really got a lot of wheels spinning in my head, and I'm definitely going to send this episode and make sure my dad listens to it too, so maybe he can get some ideas with where he's at in life. And I just definitely appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your direction with franchises. And if people want to get connected with you, learn more about you, what you do, or maybe even get started in franchises, what's the best place for them to do that?
It's loyaltybrands.com. And I even have a special presentation for your dad, a webinar that is a link on why you should be a franchise versus open your own business. So I have an hour presentation on why you should be a franchisee as opposed to being a mom and pop.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and we can definitely share that in the show notes too. And for those who want to tune into that. So again, John, thanks so much for sharing and being on the Elevate Media podcast today.
It's my pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Elevate Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you in the next episode.